Well, a very hearty good morning to you all. The rain has passed. It's left quite a lot of flooding in its wake. But fortunately, although I don't think fortune comes into it, I think common sense has played a huge role here. There's no flooding at Bealtaine. All the water channeled itself into all the little streams and the little ditches, and it just flowed quite happily through the ponds and down, further down then into the River Firish. None of it spilled out over the banks, and no soil was washed away from the banks either, because the banks are all planted with trees. So the root systems of the trees hold the banks in place and make sure that it doesn't matter how much water flows through them, there's no erosion. Of course, many of the ditches that I'm seeing being built here in Ireland at the moment, I'm just putting my coffee down, many of those ditches just have earthen banks. Jack! The diggers have just piled up the earth and sort of compressed it, thinking that that's enough, foolishly thinking that's enough to hold the banks in place, which of course it is not. Not in this kind of series of extreme weather events. So here we are at the pond. I did come down and check yesterday just to see how the frog spawn was doing, and that was doing okay. Seemed to be holding well. Now Jack's just sitting down there by the gate. Jack! Come on, up this way. Come on, good boy. So I'll just take you over to where some of the frog spawn was. We'll have another look and see how it's done. See how it's fared. Now that's interesting. There's one clump of frog spawn which is now in one of the upper small ponds of the stream, and you can just see it there. But that's okay. Even if that gets washed down a wee bit further, there's so many of these little mini pools that it should stay within Bealtaine. Okay, so let's look up here. Oh, there we go. See, the birthing pool that I constructed has fared very well, because that's quite sheltered. That's out of the way of the flow of, kind of massive water flow if there's flooding. So you can see, in fact you can see some of the frogs moving around in there. I'll go around the other side, there should be a better view. And to look at Bealtaine this morning, there's no signs of anything terribly extreme having happened. And yet, of course, it has. We know that just from the video yesterday. So, as I've been saying from the very beginning of these videos, going back to 2010, and the website going back even further, we need to adapt. And we need to infuse that adaptation with massive, massive dollops of common sense. Now, women are very good at common sense. Because I've often said, during the early years of Bealtaine, my methods were scorned. They were ridiculed, and in some cases even laughed at. And sometimes by visitors to the garden that I'd kept open for people to be able to see what it was I was doing. But the old saying, the proof of the pudding, well, here's the proof of the pudding. And climate change has happened from the beginning of time, but of course it's never happened this quickly because we've never had so much extractive abuse of Mother Earth, which has been building since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And any fool who just knows the bare bones of history will know that. So we just need to kind of speed up with our adaptation. We need to keep pace with what's happening. And simply planting, as I've said, is going to lessen the blow, the continual blows really of extreme weather events. I was watching the news last night on some of the, come on Jack, we'll just walk back up, some of the villages in Devon and up around Yorkshire and the northwest of England. They had the army out, laying down sandbags and preparing for the sort of destructive force of a massive water event in the rivers. And I was just sat there watching it and thinking, but we've known for decades, if not hundreds of years, that if we plant the uplands, where the majority of water falls, if we plant them with trees, the water that does get into the rivers is reduced by a ridiculously huge amount. And yet the uplands aren't planted. They're left as heathland or, moors, which is not the natural state of that land. So common sense and just intuitive reactions to these events, walking the land, looking, understanding, should be our guide. I've made it my guide. Mother Earth has continually spoken to me, continually instructed me on what to do. And that's where that saying, that quote, has come from. Plant like your life depends upon it, for it does. That's what I call common sense wisdom. So we just go around the back. Come on, Jack. Come on. There's a beautiful sense of calm this morning. Now, I did try to get down to Ardcarn Garden Centre yesterday, but I got about, I suppose, 2 or 3 kilometres along the road, having already gone through quite a few ginormous puddles, when I came to a point at which I just wasn't prepared to take my car through it because it was so deep and so wide. But I put my hazard lights on and I sat there for a wee while just seeing other cars that came through it. And what I noticed was it was the big SUVs that ploughed through it. And I thought, oh, that's good, the SUVs can get through it. And then I sort of felt a sense of what they felt as they drove through it, what those drivers felt. And it had to come down to a certain amount of arrogance and a certain amount of self-assuredness that they were almost immune to this extreme weather event. And that sort of feeling of immunity bestowed a sense of, well, it sort of doesn't matter. So as opposed to selflessness, it became a very selfishly assured act. And at that point I knew why I didn't have an SUV. Because the important thing for me is to be very much a part of everything that Mother Earth is going through, and to try to understand it and not to put myself above situations, because I think that I probably lose a lot of my intuitive responses if I did that. Now there's the beautiful little catkins out on the hazel. Look at that, it's like a little yellow mist. It's beautiful this morning. So I should be able to head off to the garden centre now today without anything to impede my progress. And there's likely to be a bit more rain, but looking up there, it doesn't look too bad. It sort of has reverted to a normal level. The only bit of damage to the tunnel is the tablecloth has got blown up into a sort of a bunch by the wind. But I do see some tulips in here. Look at that. Some beautiful tulips. Of course, one of the tasks that I have to do in the coming few weeks is to wash the polytunnel, because it's become rather opaque. Once it's washed inside and out, it'll become clear again. So that's something I'll be doing. And I just see some beautiful red sorrel has come up down there. That's lovely in salads. Orange juicing. It's self-seeded. And there's a lovely foxglove beside it. I just walked back over to the cottage because as I came out the back door I noticed all the snowdrops were open. So I'll just show you some of the snowdrops. That's in the big pot, the one that I planted the Scots pine into. Got some lovely colours of dogwood up there. So thanks ever so much to those of you who have gone on to the website and purchased a book or a calendar. There are still some calendars left. Thanks to everyone. Thank you just for coming to Bealtaine Cottage and sharing this little life in the west of Ireland. There's the snowdrops. And the muscari, and the little tete-a-tete daffodils. So blessings to you all.